The three heroes reached the rendezvous point without being followed. Their contact had not yet arrived, and Dawn was beginning to get nervous. The sorcerer scratched his head, and looked about nervously. "Are they late?" "No," replied Ombert, buffing a metal stud on his leather armor. "We're early. Nothing to worry about. Cease your talk, my friends," chided the woman in full plate. "Bad enough we have to deal with these criminal contacts of yours. I shouldn't have to hear you babble on about it." She gripped her holy symbol of Lathander and frowned. "I hear someone," whispered the halfling. A few seconds later, three humans stepped into view, two wearing chainmail and the third only common clothing. Each carried a sheathed longsword. The unarmored one spoke. "Greetings, Ombert. I trust you have our payment." "Yes. You have information on who holds the dead body of our slain cleric friend?" "Why, yes. Yes, I do. It's me." As the man grinned, his features and clothing shifted, revealing a haughty man of dusky features in ceremonial black full plate. "Malark!" exclaimed the paladin, drawing her sunblade. The evil cleric grinned and drew his weapon. It flashed in the night, bearing the profane symbol of the Cyric and exuding an aura of true evil. "My skull blade thirsts for your blood. Now I shall avenge my brother's death at your hands." With his words, 6 swordsmen appeared out of thin air and surrounded the heroes.
The Church of Cyric is a fanatical organization devoted to the deity of murder, treachery, and deception. The most devout followers of the Prince of Lies are willing to give their lives for their cause, and often do so if they can take others with them. Worshippers of Cyric include murderers, liars, spies, traitors, and assassins with no loyalty to anyone except themselves. Even loyalty to their church is tenuous at best in the face of destruction. Others embrace this dark deity because they hope his philosophy of supremacy and power will empower them as well. Cyric's church is a large cult with members in every city. Because it is by and large a chaotic organization, its members often act independently or in small groups with little or no knowledge of each other, making the church very hard to combat. Likewise, its members are hard to predict and incorrigible in their evil, some willing to betray their fellows for their own gain, others more likely to lie their way through a situation until they can murder their captors and escape.
Born to a lower-class woman in Zental Keep, presumed by Cyric's detractors to be a prostitute, the mortal Cyric never knew his parents and was sold into slavery after his mother was killed when he was very young. As a young adult, he fell in with a thief's guild and learned to fight during his travels. During the time of troubles, he rose to godhood and inherited the divine portfolios of Bane, Baal, and Merkel, the deities of tyranny, murder, and death. His meteoric rise from orphan to deity would eventually suffer several dramatic plummets before his power stabilized at its current level. Through divine events he himself orchestrated, Cyric lost the portfolio of tyranny to Svim, much of Merkel's portfolio to Colamber, and caused the destruction of Zental Keep, at that time one of the largest concentrations of his own worshippers. This weakened his power and the authority of his church. He later made the mistake of reading the Serenishad, a magical book of his own creation that caused the reader to believe that Cyric was the most important being in the universe. The madness and megalomania this caused weakened him further. Since that time he has regained his senses, consolidated his power, and encouraged a renewed fervor in his church.
Bolstered by the evil deity's new focus, the Cyricists work harder than ever to promote his goals. The symbol of Cyric is a white jawless skull centered on a black or purple sunburst. He kept the symbol even though it originated from his ownership of the portfolios of death and the dead, which he no longer has. Some of his temples display minor variants on the symbol, such as a sword under the skull, flaming eye sockets, or even multiple skulls. Cyric still has a few worshippers who converted to his church from Bane, Baal, and Merkel when those deities died during the time of troubles. These worshippers use the symbols of their original deity, an upright black hand on a red shield for Bane, a skull surrounded by streaming teardrops for Baal, and a skull on an inverted shield bordered by finger bones for Merkel, or a combination of the old symbol and Cyric's. Most of these splinter cults have been eliminated or absorbed into larger groups. The Church of Cyric is cellular in structure, with different groups of Cyricists keeping their location and agenda secret and often even working against each other. These habits stem from the Dark Sun's former period of madness, when he would give conflicting information to different high priests, causing them to turn their temples against each other. Cyric has stopped doing this overtly, but his chaotic nature and the fact that he embodies lying and intrigue attracts people of similar character who regularly betray their allies, which makes eliminating the problem difficult.
A Cyricist temple is led by the most powerful cleric of Cyric. Present, but sometimes a cleric, Blackguard, takes this role. The temple's hierarchy is based on power and personal influence, with the most charismatic and dominant leaders taking positions of authority. Regular turnovers in leadership ensure that those who manage to stay in power tend to be very paranoid, often controlling their immediate subordinates and allies with magic to prevent betrayal. The church's fractious nature leads to the creation of numerous splinter groups and cults, such as the Flames of the Dark Sun, an order of assassins devoted to Cyric and based in the Cloud Peaks Mountains. The order is allied with the Mountain of Skulls Temple in and dedicated to the destruction of heretical sects of Cyricists, such as those located at the Twin Towers of the Eternal Eclipse. The Cyricists wish to destroy anyone who opposes Cyric, eliminate rival churches of their own religion and others, kill those devoted to good, and take over the world. They pursue these goals with many different methods, sometimes at odds with the plans of other Cyricist temples. Some start armed conflicts against temples of other deities. Some quietly assassinate influential beings of good alignment. Some promote banditry. Some take over guilds and cause economic destruction.
Kidnapping, murder, and espionage are also common activities. Because of their fragmented and independent nature, the cells of the church might be plotting just about anything that furthers the cause of the Prince of Lies. The Cyricists welcome new converts. They see their deity as the one true divine authority, and thus joining Cyric's church is the only sensible choice. Even defeated enemies can buy themselves time if they volunteer to convert. However, conversion to Cyric under such circumstances usually involves torturous rituals and horrible evil rites, including human sacrifice, performed by the would-be converts to prove their devotion, so anyone of good alignment who uses such a ruse needs to escape before such events occur or risk a forced alignment change. Some temples recruit people, brainwash them into fanatics, and then send them on suicide missions. These converts are particularly dangerous because they have been convinced that their deaths advance the cause of Cyric. In their minds, they win either way, since martyrdom brings them favor in the afterlife.
Although the temples have gained many new recruits, because the church was initially formed of worshippers of three other deities, Cyric has been known to call for purges to eliminate heretics. He has done so at least twice to remove those with allegiance to Bane while that deity was dead, and sometimes calls for a purge simply to stir up his followers. Those who flee such purges, whether justified or not, often start their own cells and recruit more followers to the cause. The church is fond of disguising agents as benign parties, then having these agents pay good aligned adventurers large amounts of magic items, typically scrolls and potions, to undertake a quest. When the quest proves to further the cause of the church or is an outright evil act, other agents surprise the adventurers and either slay them or attempt to gently convert them to the cause of Cyric. These methods have resulted in several powerful adventuring companies turning to Cyric. In addition to the people who revere Cyric out of genuine devotion, Cyric has many worshippers who pay him lip service in the hope of staving off his attention and wrath. The devout of Cyric look upon these weak-willed folk with contempt, but are not above taking advantage of these lay worshippers if necessary. Cyric's church allies itself with monsters that have similar interests or creatures that are easily dominated or bribed into service. The church is particularly fond of demons, undead, evil humanoids, and chaotic and evil outsiders. In wilder lands where it has no need to disguise its allies, the church employs creatures such as ethics, chimeras, giants, hierarchical sphinxes, howlers, minotaurs, ogres, ropers, wyverns, and young dragons. The following creatures of Vran are also common allies: Banelars. Although some zealous Cyricists dislike their lawful nature, the Banelars are loyal, black unicorns, only in Thay, dread warriors, and Yonti, tainted ones, in Columtion, Chalt, Londeth, and Toshalar. Some powerful clerics keep a summon monster or planar ally spell or scroll in reserve just in case they need backup. Most clerics also keep a few skeletons or zombies in their lair. The church sometimes supports cells of the Cult of the Dragon, although this is less frequent since Cyric lost the Portfolio of Death, Monasteries of the Long Death, again, not as common since Cyric lost that part of his portfolio, and other evil organizations on a small scale.
Currently the Gendarme forces in Darkhold are in chaos due to infighting between followers of Cyric and worshippers of Bane. Sol Kembrel of Zental Keep has encouraged this strife by sending unruly members of the Gendarme, or those who openly worship Cyric, to this western castle, because he sees Darkhold as a place to weed out the weak from his organization. His plan may backfire if Cyric's devout take charge, and several cells of Cyricist cultists have been supplying aid to their comrades in the castle. Should Darkhold turn to Cyric, the Gendarme will lose their western arm and Cyric will gain a large and established military force and fortification in the western heartlands. Though Cyric is opposed to nearly every other deity, Shar has been tempting Cyric with the power of the Shadow Weave. This power would allow his clerics to sever the ties they have with Mystra to cast their spells, which he finds abhorrent. The best ally for a single member of the church is an associate from a nearby allied temple. If a temple can be convinced that a particular group, such as a band of heroes, is a threat to the church or an affront to the holy power of Cyric, a Cyricist is almost guaranteed assistance from that temple, even if it's only in the form of sanctuary, supplies, and information.
Because he opposes everything good and considers all other deities either beneath him or rivals for his power, Cyric is an enemy of nearly every organized benevolent group and the churches of all other deities, including evil ones such as Mask and Bane. His rivalry with Bane is especially fierce now that the Black Hand has returned. Cyric also particularly hates Mystra and Kolemba and directs his church to eliminate worshippers of these deities at every opportunity. Because of these conflicts, the followers of Cyric rarely work with those of other deities. The Cyricists oppose the Zentarim because of the latter's alliance with the Banites, although followers of the Dark Sun usually don't go out of their way to attack Zentarim troops since both groups promote evil. No group hates the Cyricists more than the Banites. They consider Cyric a usurper of Bane's portfolio, and only the fact that Bane reclaimed much of his power from Cyric has prevented an all-out holy war. As it is, Bane sees Cyric as an annoying car who once stole a piece of meat from his table, and when he finds it convenient, Bane will have that car put down.
The followers of the Black Hand treat the Cyricists in a similar manner, not going out of their way to find the servants of the Prince of Lies, but wasting no time slaying them if they are discovered. The Cyricists are more active in their pursuit of the Banites, but the feeling is otherwise mutual. Individual members of the Church of Cyric tend to have many enemies, particularly within their own organization. Fortunately, these feelings shift quickly at all but the highest levels of power, so someone who is an enemy one day might not be one the next. because they engage in murder and deceit across the continent, and because their deity is a foe of every other deity, followers of Cyric expect to be opposed by just about anyone that discovers their identity. Even followers of other evil deities have been known to interrupt a battle with heroes when a group of violent Cyricists arrives. Cyricists prefer to travel alone or in small groups, because larger groups are more difficult to manage, with all the internal conflict and backstabbing, and likely to draw attention. A typical encounter with a group of Cyricists is a cleric leader, plus a wizard or sorcerer and 1 or 2 barbarian, fighter, or ranger bodyguards, all worshippers of Cyric. Barbarian bodyguards are common in barbarian lands, fighters in civilized lands and on well-traveled roads, and rangers in forested regions. The wizards who work with Cyric rarely specialize in a school of magic, since they lack the discipline to focus on a single school. Cyricists encountered on the road may be moving to or from a known temple, preparing to establish a cult cell, in the middle of a mission of war, or fleeing persecution elsewhere.
Those founding a cell or fleeing another place are more likely to be secretive and non-confrontational toward any they meet, not wishing to draw attention to themselves. The others display their allegiance openly and violently challenge any groups they think they can overcome, or whose destruction they think would benefit the church. The forces of Cyric are generally too undisciplined to formulate consistent group tactics. Each individual tends to act independently, trying to balance the desire to slaughter many foes in the name of Cyric and the fear that one's allies will take advantage of the distractions of combat to eliminate a rival. Only in the presence of a powerful and respected leader are Cyricists able to coordinate their attacks. This does not mean they are stupid. They don't interfere with each other's attacks and take advantage of cooperative opportunities when they occur, but they rarely enter combat with these plans in mind. About half of Cyric's clerics use their spells to augment their physical prowess and attack their foes in melee, while the rest attack directly with their spells. Both types shout the glories of the Dark Sun while in combat.
The wizards and sorcerers conceal themselves with illusions and defensive magic and attack suddenly with aggressive and destructive spells. Barbarians use their rage often and early, fighters focus on raw power over tricky maneuvers, and rangers optimize their two-weapon fighting abilities. The Church of Cyric draws power from its many worshippers, its magical resources, and its very persuasive and believable members. Cyricists are unpredictable, zealous, and even willing to die if it means they can destroy enemies of their religion in the process. This makes them very dangerous people to cross, and since their deity is a deity of illusion, lies, and murder, anyone who thwarts their plans can expect multiple assassination attempts, devious incriminating rumors, and haunting images in dreams and the waking world. The greatest weakness of the Church is its fractious and distrustful nature. Its low-level followers tend to be unruly and argumentative. Its agents in the middle ranks of its hierarchy distrust the leaders, exploit the grunt followers, and plot against each other. The leaders of the Church are even worse than the mid-rank members, and different temples to the Dark Sun have holy wars against each other as often as they do against bastions of good such as Lathander and Torm. Sometimes the best way to defeat a group of Cyricists is to alert another group of Cyricists to its presence.